Hello and welcome to ELSAConnect. ELSA, as we call ourselves, are the alumni of the very prestigious Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi, which was established in 1956. And ELSAConnect is an initiative of ELSA Bangalore. This is our third year running now, and we have done about 180 sessions already. What we do in these sessions is that we bring you ELSAs who are based across the globe, and they share this 1.5 hour that we spend together, 1.5 hour together. They share their lives, and we journey together with them to see the challenges they've faced, how they've surmounted challenges. They share their learnings, areas of expertise. So, of course, the areas become very, very varied, right from filmmakers to artists to authors to diplomats to homemakers. And as we journey together, we all can feel this togetherness of what the other person has gone through to reach where they are today and what makes them the person that they are today. Today, as ELSAConnect, I must admit, and I'm not going to take away much time, is absolutely a fangirl moment for me. We may be 2 decades apart from college, having graduated together, but I'm a very big fan of today's speaker, Alankrita Srivastava. And the films that she's made, the meaningful subjects, the women-centric roles, the stories, I'm sure if you haven't seen anything, then you've really missed out a lot in life, will leave a very, very meaningful impact on you. And today's session is being curated by Sandhya Kumar, who herself is an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Just to add here that in case you have not subscribed, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, ELSA Bangalore, and you can revisit any of our ELSAConnect sessions. Sandhya, over to you. And welcome, Alankrita.
Thank you, Vandana. Welcome, Alankrita. As Vandana said, we're very excited to have you with us today. I think I first met Alankrita almost 20 years ago when she was what they call my super senior at Jamia Mass Communication Program. And all the super seniors were very busy editing their films and on their way out. And everyone was thinking, what are we going to do next? Are we going to go into news? Are we going to make our own films, a documentary? And this is the one thing I remember about you, Alankrita. One time you were, just very quietly, you said, I'm moving to Bombay. I'm going to work in the Hindi film industry and I'm going to be assisting Prakash Jha. And I think it was on Rajniti that you worked on. And that's it. I mean, then kind of we got busy. I went the documentary way. And many years later, I remember seeing the trailer and poster of Turning 30, 2011. And I was thinking, wow, I mean, everybody goes to Bombay, wants to be a director, wants to make their own film. And here Alankrita is ready. She's made it. She's out with it. And just in a few years, then we had Lipstick Under My Burkha, Dolly, Kitty, or Wo Chamakte Sitare, and the OTT platforms. So I think Alankrita is a household name, especially for young women. I know lots of people who are fans of a lot of your films and content. So thanks again, Alankrita. Very excited to be in conversation with you. Since this is an ELSA forum, I want to go back to your time at LSR, where you read journalism. Did you already know that you wanted to get into making films and that too in the Hindi film industry?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited, to be connecting with so many people from college. And it's so weird. I haven't really met any of you except Sandhya when we were like so many decades ago, in person. But I really feel like, it's like we're all sitting in one living room and having this chat. So thank you. I think I actually became interested in sort of expressing myself through writing and through making films. When I was in school, I went to an all-girls boarding school. That's Welham Girls, and there was this course called audio visual. And it was like an activity class, and it was really wonderful. So when you were in class 12, if you were doing the audiovisual class, that was the year that you made like this film, which was just made with stills and music. And it was projected on this big screen on Founders Day in like this open sort of area in the dark. And it was a very romantic feeling. And I don't mean romance in that very conventional love kind of way, but just that feeling of, oh my God, you're seeing something larger than life. And they were just the students who were sort of making these films. So I think I was very fascinated by this audiovisual class, and I also like sort of signed up for that class. And in class 12, we also made our little film with stills and music. So I think for me, that was maybe like, in retrospect, that was the time when I really became, interested in, in the audiovisual medium. And I was also very interested in writing. And that is why actually I went to LSR. Incidentally, my mother is also from LSR. And so anyway, I went to LSR to study journalism. And I think, journalism as a course felt very close to the various things I was interested in. So I was really excited about the course, and I was just hoping that I would get in. And luckily I did. And we had like a great faculty. And I think while I was at LSR, I think um, what exactly I wanted to do became very clear to me by the end of my course there. Because, initially I was just interested in the media. So I was like, while I was at LSR, like, one summer I interned with Lintas. I was an advertising agency. Then I interned with the Asian Age, and I was to also write articles for the Pioneer and all that. I mean, as part of the journalism course, those are the kind of things we had to do. Then I interned with the documentary production company. I used to do some on and off gigs with NDTV. And luckily I was, doing all of that while I was in college. But I think by the time I was in third year in LSR, I knew that I was actually, what I was looking for was something else. And I was really interested in features. And I think I may not have had the courage initially to even accept that that's what I wanted to do, because I just felt like it's this big daunting thing. And I don't come from like a family where, anybody's a filmmaker and I don't know how I'm going to do it. But in journalism, and in the last year, in the third year, we had to do this project, which was like you could choose your subject. And the subject I chose for my project, for my journalism project in college, was women film directors in commercial Hindi cinema. And MG and everyone, they were, they had to like say okay to our projects. And MG, I remember she asked me, she was like, why do you want to do this project? I was like, no, because now I think actually what I want to do is work in feature films. And I think that project was really helpful, because I went to Bombay, and I met Tanuja Chandra, and I kind of did, and then I also like did some research on Deepa Mehta, and I met her at Habitat at some like thing. And so I think that project really helped me like put my thoughts together in terms of and also understanding, I think, the idea of the female gaze. So I think that project, now that I'm talking about and thinking about it, I think that was a pretty much like a turning point for me, because I actually uh, like, it was many things I wanted to do, and I was sort of chronicling how very few women are actually, making films that are releasing commercially. So anyway, I did that project and all of that. And then by the time I finished, after that, I went to Jamia and did my master's. And I think, and then by the time while I was in Jamia, I think I was pretty clear that I actually wanted to come to Bombay to do features. And which is why towards the end, Sandhya, when you met me, I think I had figured out that I'll go, because I had met Mr. Jha, and he had told me that he's, in fact, wasn't Rajni, it was Ganga Jal, and he had told me that he's starting the film and would I like to come and, assist him and all of that. And that's how I had just worked. And in fact, so yeah, it was around the end of Jamia when I moved to Bombay. So yeah, so I think LSR was very crucial in my journey, because I kind of had an idea that I definitely wanted to do something in the media. But I think by the end of it, it became clear that by the time I was graduating from LSR, I think the thought was quite clear in my mind that I wanted to make feature films.
I mean, it's very interesting for me, and also surprising for me that you had such clarity of thought already from the beginning, because I think a lot of us kind of meander and find our way even after doing a master's. Before we talk more about your films, even though I think many here would have seen the films, can we show the trailers of Lipstick Under My Burkha and Dolly Kitty Aur Chamakte Sitare, and then we'll move on to the discussion.
हर लड़की की लाइफ में आता है जब उसमें औरत बनने की चाहत जाग उठती है।
रेहाना अबीदी और मेरा गाना 7 थिंग्स से इंस्पायर है।
लो आ गई भोपाल की ब्रिटनी नंबर 3।
रोजी की ख्वाहिशें भी रोज की तरह खिल रही थी।
ये फोटोज ना लॉटरी की टिकट है। आप दोनों का आपस में कुछ रिश्ता है? लो
फैंसी।
खंडहर से घर के एक बंद कमरे में रोजी कैद थी, अपने जवां रंगी अरमानों के साथ बिल्कुल अकेली।
पहले नाम बताओ अपना।
बुआ जी।
किसकी बुआ जी? मेरी बुआ जी तो नहीं हो।
पर्दे बड़े मोटे थे, अंधेरे में रोजी को कोई देख नहीं पाता।
लाइफ में सिर्फ बच्चे ही पैदा करने हैं या कुछ और भी प्लान है तुम्हारा? ले ली जान 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 बिना पूछ हाय हाय, दे दी जान 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 बिना पूछ वाय वाय। ले ली जान 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 बिना पूछ हाय हाय।
सामने देखिए प्रोफाइल हटाइए, सामने देखिए सगाई हो रही है आपकी, फोटो खींच रही।
कभी कभी लगता है कि बड़ी सेक्स नुमा आवाज है रोजी। जसपाल रोजी को देखना चाहता हूँ।
जसपाल रोजी को रोज देख सकता है, सपने में।
सपने में?
लिपस्टिक वाले सपने।
लाली चढ़ी होठों पे गुलाब की, जाली चढ़ी आंखों पे चाहत बेनकाब सी।
सुहागरात तक वेट करें।
हाँ,
कंडोम बोलते हैं इसको।
दरअसल वो जज्बात में बह जाते हैं तो उस टाइम कॉन्डोम।
अब कुछ भी हो हमें तुम्हारे साथ।
Anya, we're not seeing the image.
Okay, sorry. Okay, give. It's playing. Let me share.
इतना अच्छा है कि तुम हमारे पास नोएडा आ गई हो, है ना? अब कुछ भी हो हम हैं तुम्हारे साथ।
एक तो बात है डॉली दी। हाँ, कहे। हाँ, अमित जी जो हमारे साथ सेक्स करना चाहते हैं दी।
कैसा लग रहा है?
कुछ महसूस ही नहीं हो रहा है।
अगर माँ की निजी शारीरिक समस्याएं हों तो बच्चे की मानसिक अवस्था और शरीर पर गहरा असर पड़ सकता है।
और बाप का कोई रोल नहीं लिखा है।
हेलो, मेरा नाम किटी है और मैं रेड रोज रोमांस ऐप की तरफ से आपकी नई कंपेनियन हूँ।
तुम्हारे ड्रेस का साइज क्या है?
हमारे हाथ में फिट नहीं आएंगे।
अच्छे घर की लड़की लोग ये सब काम नहीं करती है कजली।
आपको गर्व होना चाहिए अपनी बहन पे।
ना पैसा कमा रही और
बंद करो प्लीज। देखिए डॉली, जॉब है और हम कर रहे हैं।
मिसेस यादव, आपने ऑर्डर किया था।
थैंक यू।
प्लीज ऑर्डर करते रहिएगा मैडम।
5 सितारे फिर भी नहीं देंगे।
पर हम तो बस कुछ मिनटों के लिए बात कर रहे हैं।
कुछ ही मिनटों में भी। गुड नाइट बेबी बोलने में तुम्हें कोई प्रॉब्लम है क्या?
गुड नाइट प्रदीप बेबी।
गलत रास्ता ले लिया हम लोग।
रास्ता गलत नहीं है, अलग है, फास्ट डिलीवरी के लिए।
हमको शर्मिंदा ना करो बेटिया, प्लीज।
जीजू जो ऐप इस्तेमाल किए वो
एक तो सुशील लड़का खोज के ब्याह देंगे।
ऐसा क्या है उस लौंडे में जो हम में नहीं है? तुमको सेटिस्फाई नहीं कर सकते क्या? हमेशा जवान रहोगी क्या तुम?
तेरे से डर नहीं लगता?
लेकिन सितारे तो रात के अंधेरे में ही चमकते हैं।
खिच्ची जानी है नीट वे नीट वे नीट वे, खिच्ची जानी है नीट वे।
मैं तुम्हें बताने वाला था।
कब बताने वाले थे? हर चौथा आदमी ना सिर्फ फोन सेक्स चाहता है। कभी कभी नफरत होता है खुद से, फिर कभी कभी लगता है कि अगर यही सर्विस औरत लोगों के लिए होता तो कितना अच्छा होता।
It's entertaining even to just watch the trailers. And I think that's such a strength of a director where you forget, who these actors are and they just come out as these characters. And you're seeing Konkana in both the films and still you don't see her as Konkana, you see her as the character in both the films. So Alankrita, I have actually two questions regarding both these films. I mean, one is of course to say that, yeah, that's about a women's theme. But I think, and you kind of partly were, as you were saying earlier also, you were interested in the subject, but I think the big thing is about the gaze, right? That it's a film being made about women, by a woman, but that you're seeing everything through the eyes of women. And I think that is what was so different about these films and so refreshing. I want to probe a little more to understand that what is it about this subject? And I know that, of course, there's a huge gaping gap that women directors have made films about women in India. But what is it that the reason that it's been so close to your heart and that you've been running with it in several films?
So I think, first of all, I do feel that it's not been a very conscious decision that, okay, I'm only going to make these kind of films. But I think it's more instinctive because I feel like I'm drawn to these kind of stories, these kind of characters. So from that perspective, I don't think that I made a plan that, okay, I'm only going to tell these stories and, delve in into this kind of material. I think it's more what I'm like intrinsically drawn to. And I think there are various reasons why I'm drawn to these kind of stories and, exploring these kind of sort of themes. I think what I am conscious about is the gaze while I'm making the film, to be very clear that, we are never looking at the women as outsiders and, or looking at them and objectifying them or laughing at them, but rather seeing the story and their lives as they would see them. So I think like I try that, the point of view of the films is always the point of view of the main female protagonist. And it's like, I should tell their story like they would tell their own story, and with empathy. And it's like you can laugh with them and cry with them and feel with them, but not be just looking at them from a distance and then, sort of judging them. So I think I'm very conscious of the how of the telling of the stories. And I think which stories, I feel drawn to is, I think, a large sort of byproduct of my upbringing. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I went to an all-girls boarding school, where very early on, I think like I was already exposed to the idea of, women's rights and how things are not very clear, even in terms of the law, but, so like a lot of critical thinking. And I think that got reinforced when I was at LSR. So I think my base for like understanding the status of women in society, I think has been very strong in terms of, also, I think I've always been drawn to like reading a lot of books, like a lot of literary fiction that is about women and written by women. I also come from a family of, of women who have always, I mean, I don't like using the word strong and all of that, but basically I feel like women who are, because sometimes I feel that's a very monolithic kind of word, but really women who have agency and who've been like working and studying and taking decisions and all of that. So I've had a very strong influence of women in my lives. My maternal grandmother as well as my paternal grandmother and my mother, and they've all been like very active kind of forces in my life, especially from my mom's side. So I think like all of that is kind of, shaped who I am. And I think that's the reason I've been drawn always to these kind of, these kind of stories. And of course, I do feel that I have something to say, something so the other thing is that I'm not very interested in just pushing the status quo. I just feel like, making a kind of film that has already been made, or where I feel I have nothing new to say, I don't find that very exciting. So I do feel I'm more drawn to telling stories where I feel like maybe not enough has been said, and maybe I have something that is burning inside of me that I really want to say. And I think for me that is very important, rather than just making a film which is like a big project. So I think that's the reason that I've sort of taken this path. It's not the easiest, but that's sort of the reason. And I do feel that, well, my films are also very personal and intimate, in the sense that not that these are, starting right from turning 30, and not that these are necessarily the situations I've been in, or this is the life that I have lived. But I think that feeling that I'm not fully, I'm always searching for some more freedom and some higher freedom, and always feeling like there is always something that keeps holding me back from inside, and trying to sort of grapple with that. And of course, in my case, it may be that it's just something internal, and you feel like through osmosis, it's like what society has sort of taught us, and we don't know. It's that internalized patriarchy that I feel I'm constantly trying to fight. Whereas in the characters, of sometimes it's internalized, and sometimes it's more external, like that. So I think I'm interested in these kind of themes and these kind of characters, and I think it's. And now I think as the years go by, and I see the more and more those stories I'm writing, the stories I'm interested in. So I do feel that, that is really my calling, and I'm not very overly, because sometimes people are like, oh, so you only want to do this. I said, well, there's a lot to do in what I want to do. So
I want to just come in here, Alankrita, because it's connected question is, these characters and these stories that you want to tell, like you said, it's not, a lot of them are not personal stories. And I think why a lot of people like Lipstick Under My Burkha is that it has women from different class backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, of different ages, who all have desires, not just sexual desires, but largely, exploration of, like you said, a lot of suppressed sexual desires, freedoms. How do you do the research to come up with these characters? And like, how do you, they're all fictional stories, but again, like you said, you feel intimate, you feel like you know some of these women. So as I come from a documentary background where we do a very different kind of research. And I'm curious to know how, and even the process of writing, how do you research and, make the characters the way they are?
I must say that I think I don't do that kind of, because they're fictional characters. So I think I don't really do some kind of research, honestly, to arrive at them. I do think I'm the kind of person, I'm very interested in what's going on around me and in people's lives. I love watching people. I love having long conversations with people, and they're telling me about their lives. So I feel I'm a reservoir of a lot of people's experiences. And so if I'm sitting in a cab, I want to keep talking to the cab driver and asking him what's going on. If I go to the salon, I'll keep asking the salon, the lady at the salon, what's going on in her life and all that. So I feel I'm that kind of person who likes to know, if I'm sitting in a cafe, I love eavesdropping, and I'm like trying to see what others are saying, and I pretend I'm just writing on my computer, but I'm actually so I feel I'm the kind of person who's always trying to draw from the world around me, and connected, I guess, at some, at some level with things that I might sort of feel or resonate with. But I do think that, so for me, it's a more like, I think I like getting into cities. So I think there's research in that, in the sense that I had spent a lot of time in Bhopal. I haven't lived there, but I have worked there a lot. So I was there when I was associate director in Rajniti. I had spent almost 1 or 2 years. I was practically living in Bhopal. I traveled, and then again, I was there for another few months for another project. So, I know this, and I used to walk the streets of that, the old city, and then I saw the new side, and I think and that's the reason I decided to locate the story of Lipstick Under My Burkha. Yeah. And the same with the Dolly Kitty, with Greater Noida, I think it was this area where my mom has some investments. So we would keep going there. And I was so fascinated by this barren urban kind of place, which is so close to Delhi. And then, I would see these girls who are living in this hostel, and these other people are going to the call centers. And then, my mom, who keeps talking about how it's going to become a very amazing place because she's invested there. And then this, the airport will come up and all. So I feel like, for me, that space is very interesting. And I think something that I feel affects the characters a lot. And I think so I think for me that is, and for instance,
this line which I really liked in Dolly Kitty, where she says कि तुम दिल्ली भी तो सिर्फ ट्रेन पकड़ने के लिए जाती हो. So I think that kind of comes from what you're saying, right? The spaces and that they are in Greater Noida, they are so close to Delhi, but they really have no connection to the city.
Yeah. So I think, so for me, like locating the characters in a particular context, I think there's some kind of lived experience that for me is important. But I think in terms of the characters themselves, I think really it comes from, just having seen women and known women and spoken to them, or a lot from the imagination. But of course, when I think back, everything that's there in our imagination often is connected to some, encounters we have had or whatever. So I think that, of course, I'll be able, if like I have to really think about it, in my childhood, I may have met many women who were widowed and then, being treated really like they have no lives while I was living in Patna with my parents. So I just feel like there's a lot of, what we have seen and lived that I think kind of comes through. But I must say, technically, it's not like I'm sitting and doing research on why my characters, are the way they are, or like that. So not in that technical
no, but I think the fact that you spend so many hours, I mean, you've been thinking about it, right? It's a constant process. So that's kind of where it's brewing.
Yeah. And I definitely feel like nothing that I make, honestly, everything that I make, by the time it comes out, I have lived with it for many, many years. So I take very long even to write. From the time I get an idea to writing the first draft, thinking about it. So by the time someone else sees it, it may have been 10 years since that idea was with me. So I've never actually made anything where I've just thought about it, written it and made it. Everything actually that I've done has been with me for years and years. So, I think it also keeps, you have an idea and then you keep thinking and you keep making notes and things keep happening. So yeah, it's a little organic and hard to define.
No, I think you've answered it very well. Yeah, I can totally see now that you tell me how you have these conversations and how you're thinking about it. Yes. I want to come now to the OTT platform programs. Shall we see the trailer of Made in Heaven and come and just talk about it?
Made in Heaven believes the wedding should celebrate the couple. The theme should tell their story. Love,
birds,
roses and skies,
pink and blue.
blush and sparkle.
This is your wedding.
Welcome to the Parivar.
Oh my God! I love it. I'm ready. We like this classy style, but people will not understand, no? They will think we're not spending.
More gold?
Yes!
We're in service of the bride.
This ladki se shaadi karo. That girl needs to be pure.
Pure. Like ghee.
देख लो, बना लो वीडियो, कर दो ट्वीट. आपको बात समझ आ गई है ना?
They say marriages are made in heaven, but on the ground, the reality is slightly different.
By God's grace, you have everything. Just enjoy it.
I like working, Mom. I want a baby, Adil.
Late night again? You disappeared on me.
Oh, so you decided to get married? Fuck off.
Something's been up with Adil, you know? You think he's having an affair?
He's completely into you.
शादी हो रही है, धूम मचनी चाहिए.
Get me out of here, land fucking!
You know that's a bad word, right?
They haven't treated me with any respect. Eventually, they're going to die, babe. And all that money is yours. 5,000 crores. Don't be an idiot.
मैं सिर्फ वो करना चाहता हूँ जो हमारा काम है. डिजाइन, वेन्यू, केटरिंग.
Is everything
crazy rich people getting married.
What amazing dialogues. For me, Made in Heaven is just the absolute best OTT program that India has brought out. And I've seen people talk about Lipstick Under My Burkha. I've seen Made in Heaven on repeat. And I cannot even begin to imagine the scale of doing something like this, right? It's like watching 9 films. I mean, it's so large budget, scale, production value, characters, acting. But what I thought was extreme genius was how so many issues, you talk about patriarchy, you talk about dowry, infidelity, all of this around wedding planners and just how huge weddings are in India. Did this idea, when you co-wrote this with Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kakti, and is this something that you guys had been talking about for a while, or is this something that Amazon brought to you? How did the idea for this series come about?
So this show, actually, the idea was Zoya and Reema's. They had this idea. They just had thought that there should be this show which is about 2 wedding planners, and one the guy is gay and the woman is having some sort of issues with her marriage and sort of rethinking what marriage is. So they had this idea, and so when I met them, that's basically they had, and they did have this idea that every sort of episode would have one wedding, and something would it would be a specific wedding story in each episode, basically. So yeah, so when I met them, they asked me if I wanted to write this show, and initially I wasn't very sure and all of that, because they were not, it's not like I knew them from before or they were friends of mine. But we had some meetings and we got along really well, and then we just started writing pretty much from scratch, because that's all that we had till then. And I think the writing part was super fun. It was lovely because I think we could just really, the thing is that weddings are so, I don't know, it's like such a big thing for any Indian family.
Ladki ki shaadi.
Totally. And, but actually there's so much that goes on, and weddings really are a time where I think like emotions are at their peak, and people are either like they're fully like with their facades on, but very quickly that facade can like fall as well, because people are so like hyper. So we thought it'd be really fun to sort of go into that and explore different things that would happen in a wedding. And I think also the idea of, and for me what really drew me, I mean, honestly, I actually did this show because I really enjoyed working with Zoya and Reema. And I love the idea also of exploring, the life of a guy in Delhi who is gay. And actually at that time, that homosexuality was still, even by law, still considered criminal. And just to see like, because of course with a certain amount of privilege or experience, even even in terms of sexuality is very, very different, but you're still on the fringes and there are still so many things to sort of negotiate. So I think that was something that I was very interested in exploring, as well as, of course, the idea of jumping class, because I think aspiration for me is also a running theme in all my work, because I do feel that, because I was born when, when I went to school, when the economy hadn't opened up. And when I was in school, the economy opened up in the early 90s and satellite television came. And I think I've really seen that sort of change. And I've seen, I think the idea of aspiration changing and all of that, and it's very, very clear in my head. And I think that is constantly a running theme for me. And I'm always attracted to stories about, where character, because I feel like Indians are still very new at wanting things. And it's like, there's so much of like transition of, from have-nots to haves, and what that takes. And I personally like feel like, because there's been so much inequality, it's absolutely fine to, use very ingenious means to move up the ladder. And I think, so for me, aspiration also is a very, very interesting sort of theme. I feel it informs the lives of men, but it definitely very interesting the lives of women. So I think for me, that was also a very interesting theme that, we were exploring in Made in Heaven. So yeah, so I think it was fun, and and of course writing it was amazing, and shooting it also has been super fun. And yeah,
well, the whole show is super fun, and so I think the contrast between a lipstick under my burqa from a more technical point of view, and I'm saying like some censorship point of view, like you had to deal a lot of censorship issues with lipstick under my burqa, which perhaps you didn't have to do with Made in Heaven being an OTT program. So would you say that the final product that came out, or do you think you also write differently knowing that one thing is going to go under certification and one thing is not?
To be honest, I don't do that. I mean, I wrote Turning 30, Lipstick, Dolly Kitty. Really, I wrote what I wanted to write, and I pretty much shot what I wanted to shoot. I think there's a lot of internalized censorship that's already there, because I've grown up in India, and what kind of stuff you can make. Like, I will not conceive a scene which is very violent, or which is which requires nudity, for instance, because there are certain there's a certain idea of a society in which you are making your work, and that censorship exists. So I think that idea of censorship is really, it's ingrained in us, and it's very hard, at least for someone like me, to fight it. So I feel I'm already subconsciously pretty censored in my mind. So when I wrote Lipstick Under My Burqa, I didn't think I'm writing anything that is provocative or will have that kind of a response. With Made in Heaven, of course we knew at that time was like still the better days of streaming platforms in terms of censorship, because at that time when we were writing it, we knew that we won't have to go to the censor board to get it cleared and all of that. And of course at that time there was no chance of being able to, and I think things have changed now, but at that time when we were writing it, which was I think in 2016, we knew that this could never be a film Made in Heaven, because we knew that would never get passed by the censor board.
Yeah.
Because but even then, even though we were going to a streaming platform, we knew like how we are going to shoot. Like we had, so it, like for instance, we knew like how much skin we will show, what we will show. We were pretty clear about what, and so I think the idea is also not that one has to just, because now you're going to a streaming platform now, it's like you can do anything. You're still making stuff for an Indian sort of audience. So I think, again, I feel that sense of self-censorship is already there. But what I do want to say is that now I think even streaming platforms, in fact, it's this, there's a lot of like, so when I did Bombay Begums, I had a tough time after it's come out. So I, in terms of, because now it's no longer that you have to it's just like the censor board, but there's also now people, just do like they sort of just can react to the material later. And now there are all kinds of technical things that you can have a retrospective action taken on something that has already been passed. So I do think the status of censorship in India is, I think it's always been very dodgy right from the time that, India gained independence. And I think it continues to be a messy space. Definitely, I think with audiences changing and being more sort of having more access to international content, things have changed. But I think we have a very complicated relationship as a country with censorship. Considering we are a free and democratic country, I think there should be no censorship in India. If we can vote when we are 18, there's no reason that we should be told what we can watch and not watch. I think that it's not so clear cut. That's what I was going to say, that streaming is amazing and theatrical is very difficult. I'm just saying that now the whole thing is a bit messy.
So I think what this has got me thinking is, like you've been down in the industry about 20 years. And while I think audiences are evolving because they're getting exposed to more and more content, both Indian and international, at the same time, I think the kind of Hindutva politics we're seeing at the center, the censorship is becoming more and more stringent, whereas the audience is opening more and more, right? So in that background, have you ever got like very negative feedback for your content from people, from audiences?
It depends, because it depends if you consider like trolls and bots audience, which I really don't. But definitely, I think you always get a for any as I think as like as a filmmaker, any work that you put out, you'll always get good and bad, and sometimes the proportion is very different. That you might get like like a different sort of mix of stuff. But of course, in the context of I think the fact that things have changed so much in the country, I think I definitely experienced it during Bombay Begums, that there was like a major sort of unfounded kind of criticism of the show, which really was coming from a very trolling kind of like a space. And you always can tell when, it's, and I think what's happened is that more and more, like, because there's this faceless kind of trolling that happens on social media, that it's a very different kind of reaction. It's very different from meeting people. And I still meet people. They're like, we feel your work is very bold, and we feel very weird watching it and all. I have people who have said it to me very openly, and I feel it's fine. And that's a very different kind of criticism, because it's with like, when they speak about their own discomfort, and sometimes it comes from the fact that they've all been brought up in a way, we've been brought up in a way where we don't discuss certain things are shoved under the carpet. Patriarchy is so internalized. The moment women start speaking about their own lives or their own experiences, or a gay man is like being seen as a fully active individual, people find it sometimes hard to digest. So I think there's all kinds, and of course one is a normal criticism, which is like somebody doesn't like your work for some reason, and
so that's like a bad review, say, but I'm saying more about
bad review. Like there were some people who don't connect, but I think now there's more and more of like, it's like, but you can always tell, when something is coming from like a place, or somebody who's watched it and doesn't like it, to a place where, there is so totally some other agenda involved. But I guess that's with anything that you say now,
Well, I think you've been moving from strength to strength, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. My last question before I open it out to the audience is what I sense and what I call like a sorority in Bollywood. And you just told me that you didn't know Reema and Zoya very well before you started working in Made in Heaven. But I see a lot of, just overlaps in terms of the people who've acted, or actors, the crew, the writers. And I see it as a kind of a sorority that Bollywood has with you, Nitya, Zoya and Reema. But would you say there is this kind of feeling of more women coming and joining it, both in the technical aspects and the directing aspects?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are many more women, working in films and series now than there ever were. I remember when I had just straight from Jamia, I'd gone to assist on Ganga Jal. There were only 3 women on the set. So there was me, there was a costume assistant, and there was a hairdresser. And there was a crew of almost 250 men. I think the scenario has, changed a lot now. There are many more women on set. And of course, there are many more women who are writing, who are producing, who are directing. But if you see the actual numbers, I think the proportion is still very, very low in terms of, I think Pricewaterhouse had done a study a few years back on commercially released films, and they had given this number that I think it was less than 7%. I'm sure that percentage has gone up now, but obviously not drastically in terms of the number of women who were directing films. So the percentage of women who are directing films. So I do think that it's definitely grown, but we have a very, very long way to go. And I think, like, for me, I feel like real progress will be when it's 50-50, half the films being made should be made by women, because I think like the narrative will change, the form will change, because right now I feel women have been really shut out of this process. And I think, so we don't know. I think it's many years until that will happen, but I definitely think what is the situation now is way better than it was earlier. There are still some technical fields where I think that there are very few women. For instance, sound, there are very few women who are doing, who are doing sound design. There are still very few women cinematographers, though that number is also growing, but very, very
growing, yes.
Yeah, but very, very slowly. So I think that there are a lot of fields, where there aren't so many women, but it's very different from when I started work in 2003 for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Alankrita. And I'm going to stop here because I know that there are lots of people bursting to ask questions, and that we already actually have a long list of questions. So I'm going to just call out the names of people, and maybe you can just come, switch on your camera, switch on your mic, and ask the question directly. First question's by Swati Sharan.
Hi, Alankrita.
Hi.
I'm a huge fan of your work. Wanted to start with that. So my questions are more related to process. I had a question about research, but you answered that. But I wanted to know, what's your writing process like? I do understand that you said, you carry ideas with you for a long period of time. You let them brew, and you construct your stories over a larger period of time. But do you know your characters and plot your characters first, and then kind of slowly plot your storylines? How long does it take you to finish a script, like start to finish, like in terms of process? I would be very interested in knowing how you work.
So, normally, I think my process is that the first thing that emerges in my head is it's always the characters. So, I know those people, and I feel until I know those people, nothing else really happens. So I feel like, so for, if it's, and all the protagonists, like I think, like if it's, mostly I like to do multi-narrative stories. So like 2 or 3 or those 4 protagonists, I think they always emerge in my head first. And then I think the world, in terms of like, who are, like, where do they live? What is going on around, in that city, in that space, that socioeconomic strata, that world. Like, so I think the characters and then the world. And I think plot is the last thing that kind of I arrive at. And I think plot comes to me from character and world. So it's not like I have a plot and then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to write this plot. It's always like, okay, I've thought of this character and this world, and these are her circumstances, and this is what's happening, this is where she lives and all of that. And then I'm like, okay, so what is happening in her life, And of course, vaguely, I know what it is that I'm exploring in that story, but I think it's all driven by who they are and the circumstances in which they are. And the reason I'm saying this is because I think, like for instance, in Dolly Kitty, like Kitty's character, I feel she makes certain decisions which she only makes because of the circumstances she's in. So I feel like where they are located and what is exactly going on in their lives and the city in which they are living, I think that becomes very, very sort of, important to me in terms of figuring out then what are they going to do and what's going to happen, all of that. So I think, so once I have that, then I start jotting down like points and things. So I write in a way where it's just like, it's free flowing kind of a thing. I don't know what I'm writing. I'm writing about the characters, their thoughts. Sometimes I'm writing things about, like, as though I'm their personal stream of consciousness. Sometimes I'm writing their diary. Sometimes I'm writing things that I've seen, like I can visualize. So I just let myself do all that, until I've, and a few, like, I don't know, and that's, maybe I've not allotted time for it, but it's just something that's kind of going on. When I feel like I have enough material and I have an idea of the plot, then I kind of start writing the story. And once I have, like, which, I feel like, okay, this is roughly where it will begin, this is roughly where it will end, and this is roughly what will happen. Once I have the story in place is actually when I start writing in a more formal manner. Then I write like a step outline. So writing a step outline and then writing a screenplay normally takes me about 2.5 months to do one draft. And then it depends. No, and I normally, anything that you do is like minimum of 4, 5, 6 drafts before it actually becomes like a, it becomes a draft that is something that you can shoot. So yeah, so that's roughly, and that's why it's like many years, because you have thought of it at one time, then you're having more ideas. But yeah, then there's a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to write one draft. Then normally I give it some time before writing another draft. And the last couple of drafts are when you know, okay, I'm going to make this film. And I think that's when you start doing the, the final drafts.
Great. I have another question in terms of your how you shoot your intimacy scenes. Like, do you direct them yourself? How do you work with the actors, or do you have an intimacy director that you work with for shooting such scenes?
I shoot them myself, and I think I'm very, I have very clear, first of all, everything's written clearly in the script. So when I give an actor the script, they do know, what is going to happen. we have very clear conversations about what's going to happen in the scene. And I'm very clear that I don't shoot anything in a way that is like titillating or exploitative. And I don't use my camera like that. And I'm very clear about it. And of course, whoever has seen my earlier work will know that I'm not going to sort of do that. So I do feel that we have very lot like clear conversations about everything. And when we, and of course, like even like sometimes I give them very clear drawings and visual representations of how I'm, and we discuss everything, like how, like what are they going to be wearing, how much will show, how long, what will they do. So it's all pretty like it's we've discussed it. And of course, once we are on set, and before that we discuss it with the co-actor. So then, all of that, and with the costumes team, so what they'll be wearing, all of that. We do lots of things like there's padding and, so you do everything to make the actors feel very safe. And then when you're shooting, of course, you shoot I shoot in a closed set. So there's like, there are very few people on set, mainly like, and mostly only women, except for like because normally, except for the DP, that's the director of photography, and one camera, the guy who has to pull focus, and maybe one other guy. I use mostly only my female assistants for those scenes, and basically try and keep the set like really, really close. You put off the monitors. So the only person who's watching it is the director. That's me. I'm very close to the actors physically. I actually do everything myself so that they're totally like sort of, comfortable, and you're constantly like checking with them that is everything fine and all of that. So you have to create that kind of atmosphere, be very clear. And also I try to not take so many takes. So I know that, like, even if sometimes you have to be very sensitive. You can't be like, now do it again. If I know need 4 shots, I'll only do those 4 shots, but I won't do so many takes. I'll maximum do 1 or 2 takes of, unless I'm feeling like it's really not happening and all of that. So I think one has to figure out a way and make people feel, feel comfortable. And I think that if you're clear and making everyone comfortable, it's fine. I think the problem is that there are a lot of directors who don't know how to sort of, do this, and then people start feeling like what's going to happen in that scene and all of that. But I'm also very clear, because I'm really like, because I know that I'm not doing it for titillation and all. I'm really not into, I don't feel like I have to, do stuff for the heck of it and all of that. And mostly, in my scenes, I try to keep people quite clothed and things like that. So whatever I can do to, like, as far as the narrative should work, and still like the actors are, comfortable.
So I have a ton of questions, but I think I'll leave the floor to others. We'll connect with you later. Thank you so much.
Suki, you want to ask your question?
Hey, yeah, but I'm not putting my video on, guys, because it's horrible bandwidth here. Hey, Alankrita, so interesting. And the question I had was, in the making of these movies, sort of getting into the characters of all the people you've been making movies about, how have you personally evolved and changed over the years?
That's a very tough question, but a lovely question also. It's really strange. Like, I don't know. I remember when I had made Turning 30, and anyone would ask me, what do I do? I couldn't even say I'm a filmmaker. I would say I work in feature films. I was so tentative about, about everything and all of that. So it's a very interesting question. I don't know. I definitely think, one grows with everything one does. And I think,
true.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think about like, what do I think would have, I definitely feel like I feel more fulfilled and more complete the more stories I tell. I feel very enriched by everything. And I think for me, the process is really important. I think more than what happens later. I think for me, like, I just need, like, I really enjoy the process of just being immersed in, in some stories. So I think for me, the best thing is that I'm really in the middle and in the thick of things. I think once it's done, I feel very like at a loose end. But definitely, I think maybe I wasn't very aware of what I was doing. Like, I think I wasn't able to see a pattern in my own work and, things like that. So I feel from that in that sense, I feel like one gets much more perspective as you keep doing more work and the years pass by. And
Right.
personally, I don't know. I know that there was a big change in me from the time that I was assisting and I was an executive producer till the time I started directing. Because when I was ADing, I was always like, I had taken on a very aggressive. Taken on means obviously it must be in me. So I had manifested a very aggressive personality when I was assisting. And I was quite a terror on set, and I used to make everyone's life quite hellish. I had to scream a lot. People were very scared of me. I was very like, trying to do things literally with an iron rod. And I think that's because I was always in an atmosphere. There were hardly any women, and I felt it was very important for me to assert myself on set. I think when I started directing, I had a completely different personality. I never felt the need to, I just felt like I was a very much warmer and calmer person and all of that. So I think a big change in me personally was really from being an assistant director and an executive producer to being a director. I think that was the big change in me. I think I just didn't feel the need to keep having that sense of asserting my authority on set because I was the director. And of course there were a lot of battles I had to fight, but I didn't feel the need to be so aggressive and to always need for my voice to be heard so loudly and all. So I think that need completely went away. And I think that's when I realized that I was so different, and maybe I was bringing forth that aspect of my personality because I needed to establish my authority and all of that. So I think that was a really, really huge change. It was a very dramatic difference. Like people, when I was associate director in Rajniti, people used to call, literally used to call me Hitler and all that. They used to lie to me and all. Of course, because I felt I had to manage a lot of things, and it wasn't like I was unkind like that, but I was very like, very stern and very like, you couldn't mess with me and that kind of a person. So I think I became like much more relaxed and all when I was only directing. And I think has been the biggest shift in me. Yeah. And I think the other thing I realized again later as the years went by, initially like when I had struggled a lot with the distribution of Turning 13, and I didn't realize that it's a systemic problem. I just felt like, oh, my poor little film, and because it's not got stars and it's in English and it's about this young girl who's, like she's this girl who's like, turning 30 and trying to figure out her life. And I thought it's because it's that kind of a film and all that, there's this kind of bias against me and my work. It's only later that I realized it's so systemic. It's not just me. It's because the industry is structured like that. The economics of the industry is structured like that. The institutions of the industry are structured like that to actually not give space to women to tell their stories the way they want to. And I think that was also big learning for me when I realized it's not just about me. It's for the idea of whether women should have the same access an opportunity to tell their stories the way they want to tell them. And then I realized they haven't had that, and therefore whatever I'm facing is not just about me, it's about the idea of 50% of the population being told that you are not that important, your stories don't deserve that space. So I think that was the other really, big learning that I had. I think these would be the two things.
Hey, thanks. That was really fascinating. Thank you, Alankrita.
Kavita, you want to ask your question?
Hey, Alankrita, hi.
Hi, oh my God, Kavita and me were in college together, same batch.
Hey, good to see you and congratulations on all your successes. And my question is about your success. Actually, I want to know how you define success and how important is surface success for you. How much weightage do you give popular ratings to your cinema?
So I think my definition, my personal definition of success is that if I have can gather the resources to tell my next story, I feel I'm very successful. So my idea of success is quite basic in that sense. And I think it comes from that space of, feeling like it's so hard to put your work out there, the kind of work that one wants to do. So I think for me, like, it's just a great success if I'm somehow like, this is what I want to make, and I'm able to get the funding and it's able to like release. I feel, for me right now, I think I would just define success as that. Because I think for me, the most important thing is that I should be able to continue to tell my stories. I know that's not how everyone else perceives it, but I feel for me personally, honestly, that's really, what, how I would define success. And and about box office and all of that, I must say that I used to think that box office. So first of all, when Turning 30 had come on, that was my first feature film. I was sure that all the critics would love it, and nobody would go to the theater to watch it. And I was in for quite a shock because all the critics didn't like it. And in fact, I got a lot of terrible reviews, and I got some decent reviews, but largely like everyone was like, "What is this film?" and all of that. And then I was quite, the first day I was really shaken up. And then in the evening, my friends from school, they organized this whole thing. They were like, we all have to go to some cinema and watch the film. And I was dreading it because I was like, I'll go to the cinema and there'll be nobody watching the film and I'm just going to be feeling terrible and all of that. And it was so amazing because when we went to the theater was full, and we just got like front row seats. And I think that was the most moving moment for me, because I just felt like there's this hall full of people, they have paid to watch my film. And I cried for the entire 2 hours because I was like, I can't believe it. People have come here to watch it. And I got so much love for that film, even though it was not a critical success. And technically it was a very small release. So it wasn't really a box office success or anything. But I think like the fact that there was so many women who connected with the film, and I still get so many messages, and I meet people, and they're like, you know what, we saw that film then and we really felt like somebody understood us. So I think that made me realize that I need people to feel connected to what I'm making. And I think that is most important. And from that perspective, I think that box office is a relative thing, but it is a marker. It was pre-COVID for sure, a marker of, how many people are actually watching your film. So I must say that it mattered to me that Lipstick was a box office success. But it mattered to me more that I was just able to make it and get it out. That was more important. But of course, I was very happy that, a lot of people went to watch it. I also know the kind of stuff that I make. My measure of box office success is going to be very different from somebody else's, but I also make my material in a very limited budget. So the ratio of what makes it successful is very sort of different. But now I think now that we've like kind of been in this process of shifting to streaming, it's very hard. One doesn't really know, like, and also I do feel a lot of ratings are manipulated because of, the trolling situation and all of that. So now I think with streaming, it's harder to gauge like how many people are actually watching. The platforms don't tell you and all of that. But I think as a filmmaker, I live for the love that I get from people who've seen it, who've seen the material. And it's like you feel you want people to, even if they don't, I think like to engage with what you're making, whether they like it or not, as long as they have some thoughts on it, it makes them think, it makes them laugh, it makes them cry, they feel something. I think that's what for me is really important. And now I don't know in the next few years, I guess I'll have to recalibrate what technically successful mean or not, because right now I really don't know, now with this whole box office, and we don't know which kind of films people actually go to the theater for or not. I guess I stick to my thing of like, I should get some love and I should feel like I can continue making stuff. Then I'm good. I'm happy.
Vinita, do you want to ask your question? Vinita Banerjee.
Hi, now so I'm Vitika and I'm logging in from Gurgaon.
Hi.
Hi, congratulations, Alankrita. I'm a big fan. I've watched, I think, almost all the stuff that you've made and I love all of it. My question is it's a little technical. I just want to understand from you, when you write, do you first write and then visualize? Or do you first have a visual story in your mind and then you write for the visual medium? Essentially, what I want to understand is, how is writing for the audiovisual medium or writing for the movies different from writing for writing as an author, in your view?
So I think there's something I'm sure which is very similar, of course, because I think that, I think whether you're writing a book or you're writing a screenplay, somewhere in your head, you are seeing the characters, you are seeing the world, you are seeing what they are doing. I think the thing with a screenplay is that, at least the way I write, it's not very, it's very precise, and it's very descriptive, but only the things that have sort of struck you. So I feel like, I guess, I mean, I'm not an authority at all on, how people write books, but I feel with me, in terms of writing screenplay, I have not always seen the picture in my head, but I know the emotional picture. I may not know how I will end up shooting it, but I know what's happening. And there are a lot of moments when I know the exact thing. Sometimes I'm like, she will pick up her cup of coffee and look right at him. So then, sometimes I've seen the exact thing. Sometimes I'm just like, she's having a breakdown in the shower. I haven't seen it, but I know that's what she's doing. So I think some moments you see earlier in the process when you're thinking, some moments come to you literally when you thought of the character for the first time. Sometimes it's like textures, it's colors. When I'm writing, sometimes in some scenes, I'm very clear about the color of like the outfit, or the description of a particular prop, because it's come to me earlier. And sometimes it comes to you literally like 2 days before, where your team is like, please tell us, what is this like, what is this going to look like, what do you want? I want to know. I'm like, I want more options, I don't know, I'm thinking. So sometimes it takes that much time. Sometimes you know exactly how you're going to shoot a scene, and sometimes you know that you'll go on set, you have to block it with actors, and then you will decide how you're going to shoot a scene. So with me, I think I haven't seen the film in my head. A lot of people who write and direct both, I think a lot of them have seen the full film in their heads. I'm not that person, but there are people. So when they are writing, they actually know. And so then they go to shoot also, they know exactly what they're seeing. I'm a more exploratory person. There are some things I know for sure, and some things I will sort of, discover. But I think the visualization is something for me, it keeps evolving. When I'm discussing something with my costume department, then some other idea will strike me. Then I'm talking, and I'm going to see location, something else will happen. Then on set, something else happens. I do a lot of rehearsals with actors. So a lot of things change when I'm, doing the rehearsal. Then I'll see them doing something and I want to incorporate that. So I think it's until a film honestly comes out, I think it's always being made, because you keep adding stuff because of the background score. Sometimes you change something in the grade. So I think like there's a constant, it's never over till it's over. So for me, definitely, I know emotionally the film very clearly, and I know some visual elements. I know overall the space and the vibe. Like I know if it's like a film which, where there is a sense of claustrophobia. So I know that, okay, I don't want these extreme, I'm not going to use these extreme wide shots. And, so those kind of things you sort of know. So I don't know if I've been able to answer that question, but also I write in a way that when I read the screenplay, it more or less is clear to me how, when I'm actually looking at it as a director, after having written it, it is more or less clear to me as to what kind of shots I would need. If I need a close-up, very often at the end, I know that the way it's written, that, or I'll just write, fingers tapping on the table and begin the scene like description like that. Then I know that, okay, I'm going to start my scene. I may not do it in the edit, but so yeah.
Alankrita, maybe I'm going to invite Asha now to announce the next session for next month, after which we'll officially close this session and then we'll keep the Zoom room open. Yeah, Asha.
Yes. Hello, everyone. And Alankrita, thank you. It was absolutely fascinating listening to you. I'm a huge fan of your work. I loved Lipstick Under My Burkha, and such a beautiful, nuanced film, and the connection and commonality that so many of us see in the characters was amazing. So, Sandhya, thank you for curating this. And our next ELSAConnect session will be with Sudeshna Shom Ghosh. Sudeshna is a senior commissioning editor with Speaking Tiger currently, and she has worked with all the large publishing houses in India, from Penguin to Rupa. And what is very interesting about her is that she's equally accomplished as an editor of fiction and non-fiction for adults, as well as fiction and non-fiction for children. And she has brought out several children's imprints into children's publishing in India, like Red Turtle and Talking Cub. And Sudeshna has been a big ambassador for reading. And about 2 or 3 years ago, she's converted this passion into a library movement in Bangalore. She and her partner, Radhika Mantri, they have started 3 libraries under the banner of Cozy Nook Library. One of the Cozy Nook libraries is a free community library, which is situated in some of the poorest slums in Ijipura, where the librarians work not only giving out books, but also in teaching remedial reading to the children there. So that's with Sudeshna Shom Ghosh next month.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you. Alankrita, I will officially say thank you. Thanks for joining us and sharing so deeply, so personally, your process, your inspiration. And please come back to this forum. You know, you have a long, maybe a room full of Elsas waiting to hear more. Thank you.